So the end of 2015, I started dealing with anxiety and depression during PMS. It got to a point where it started affecting my life. I quit my job. I didn't answer my phone. Just shut everybody out except for Joe. Joe couldn't leave the house without me panicking, like, where you going? I mean, just going to the kitchen was like, where you going? I just didn't want him to leave. I had a panic attack in the parking lot of ShopRite. I just fell asleep. I'm sitting in my car panicking, freaking out that I have to get groceries for my family, but I can't go into that store. I was just so overwhelmed with anxiety. And then I literally cried out and I'm bawling. I'm like, God, I can't go in, but I have to go in there. And I just fell asleep. I prayed because it was getting out of control and it was starting to affect different aspects of my life. And I couldn't do it on my own anymore. And I prayed to God, I need him. I need you. I need your healing. I need your guidance. And he gave me a vision. He gave me a vision of healing. And I claimed that vision and I hung on to that vision. And I knew I was going to be okay. We went to the doctor, gave me Xanax. The Xanax wasn't helping. Each month during PMS, it was getting worse. It was controlling more and more of my life. It was taking longer. It was lasting longer. That little bit of depression that was there was now getting darker, scary darker. Thoughts of hurting myself during that time. Walls were going up. I felt like I had to protect myself. That's what the walls were protecting myself. Because I thought everyone was going to think I was crazy, that I wasn't worthy to do my work or to serve. My family is not, it's a very dysfunctional family. It's pretty much non-existent, except for my immediate family. So when people at True Life would say that, we're family, let me help you, or let me in, we're family, trust me, we're family. That trust, I couldn't do that. So I think during that time, those walls went up even harder and stronger at that time. And people got hurt. A lot of people who I truly love and truly care for were hurt during that time. And so I went to a gynecologist. He listened, which was the first time a doctor really listened. He did his exam. He wanted me to go get blood work done. He wanted me to go get an ultrasound done. And before he walked out of the room, he said to me, don't worry, you're going to be all right. We're going to get you in a happy place again. God has bigger plans for you. And I knew right then and there that was God. That was God that spoke through him to me, that I was in the right place. I was going in the right direction. And come to find out that I just needed to have a change in my diet, supplements, and get a partial hysterectomy. So we did that, and within 2 months, I felt like myself. I felt like me again. I felt good. But through that 6 months going through, there was a period of me saying, well, maybe God didn't give you a vision. Maybe he didn't speak to you. Questioning God, like, why is this taking so long? If you did give me this promise, why is it taking so long? And I feel like the reason was, during that 6 months, that journey was a time of not just physical healing, but it was emotional healing. It was mental healing. It was God just cleaning out so much junk that was in me, mindsets that I had. During that journey, I realized what a wonderful husband I have, because he was very gentle, supportive throughout the whole time. He cleaned out the need for me to get everybody's approval. I want to do well at my job, but I don't need approval for every little thing in my life. I don't need approval. I just don't need people's approval. I just need to keep my heart and mind focused on God, and everything else just works its way through. And that's the only thing I need to focus on. I'm not offended so easily. And when there's little things in life that come, He's given me the tools to get through those things a lot faster.
So if I could explain my childhood, my background, the best way I can, is that it was very high in education, very high in performance, and very little in God, very little in love. God was something that was kind of in the background of my life. He was there, but we didn't actively try to make Him part of our life. He was kind of there just to, as a window dressing. We go to church, we went to Catholic school, but the real big part of my life was education and getting those good grades and really performing at a high level at all times and really little room for failure. And all that hard work, it eventually paid off when I got into Fordham University. And Fordham's a great school, Jesuit institution, very high, graduation rate and things like that. And I found that when I got there, college wasn't what I thought it was. And about a semester in, I failed out. And, 18 years of work basically blowing up in my face. And essentially since then, my life has been a constant stream of disappointments, failures, broken relationships. I tried putting it all on myself like I did for those first 18 years prior to getting to Fordham, but nothing after that seemed to be working. I tried everything. I tried going to the gym. I tried eating better. I tried meeting new people. I tried reading better books. I tried meditation. Everything that I seemed to do would either backfire in my face, or I would do well at it and I would just feel empty even when I did well at it. I basically gave up on life. I really believed that I couldn't change and that, life was just random. I was stone cold atheist, did not believe in God. Whatever hand I was dealt was the hand that I got, and there was nothing I could do to change that. Fortunately, through, those past 7 years, after Fordham, I did meet a group of Christians who did love me for who I was. And even though I wasn't a believer, they kept in contact with me and they kept praying for me. And I was watching them just go live these awesome lives. I was watching them get in relationships, getting in careers, working in the city, and just actually enjoying their life. Whereas opposed to where I was just felt on my own and every day was a battle and I was constantly drained. So I was laying in bed one night and I just decided to go to church the next day. And being raised Catholic, I just went to a local Catholic church, is what I knew, is what I was familiar with. And the priest gave a homily about the meek shall inherit the earth. And as someone who had literally nothing to my name, had very little emotional connections, I had very little going for me, this is really good news. Just a little bit of God's word was enough to undo years of heartbreak and disappointment and failure. And I kept coming back. And I would go to church almost every day. And it got to the point though where I needed more. I wanted more out of my church. I wanted a sense of community. I wanted to feel loved, not just from God, but from the people who are walking that faith as well. And I was fortunate enough to have somebody who knew about True Life, who wasn't going there, but told me I should check it out. And from what I've seen on the website and just from hearing him talk about it, I got to the point where I was like, I think this is gonna be it. And then on the first day, I just something clicked there. Whereas at the church I was going to, it was just all elderly people and me. It didn't really feel like it was living. It didn't feel like a breathing church. It didn't feel like people were carrying out God's preachings in that church. But when I came to True Life for the first time, I had to watch where I was stepping because there's kids running around. There's people actually talking at church. And just by going there, it's helped me really strengthen my faith with God. But it's more than that. I've been doing things I never thought I'd be doing before. Someone asked me a few months ago if I was ever interested in working with kids, and I said no. I could not get the word no out of my mouth quickly enough. And the next thing I know, after joining True Life, I'm working with youth group. I'm working with middle schoolers, I'm working with high schoolers. I'm not just working with them, I'm not tolerating them, but I'm taking an active interest in them. Because of Christ, I'm able to repair things that were years in the making, years of heartbreak. I've been able to restore relationships through him giving me the strength to do so, but through his grace. I was trying to change things from the outside, but only Christ can change something from the inside. And by doing that, I was then able to change things from the outside. If there's just one thing I want to let people know, it's that just never to give up on somebody that you're praying for. No matter how bad in a situation they may seem, keep praying for them, because I was that person for a long time where I just was completely gone, completely distraught, so far from God. So if there's somebody that seems lost to you, don't give up on them. Keep praying for them, because that was me for a very long time.
So I guess 2016 probably was one of the hardest years that I've had. It just, I felt like kind of all areas of my life were being attacked, not just in other years there was, problems in family or problems with jobs, but 2016 was kind of, I felt like nothing was safe. So I had, problems with my kids in their school or kids in their health. We had lost a lot of loved ones, my marriage, finances, my job. And I just kind of felt like every day I was kind of waiting for the next thing to fall or the next thing to be attacked. And in my head, I knew God was there. And I've never doubted that fact. I always knew he was there. I think God knew I needed something that I could see, or something tangible that I could kind of look back on and picture the biblical truth that I kind of knew was there. And so I think he gave me this visual object lesson in Romania. Every year we go to Romania and we do summer camps with gypsies there in the villages. And it was our last morning, and we had spent a week with these young kids all the way up to teens. And they were collecting flowers in the fields for the Americans. It's kind of something they do on our last day of camp. They have these huge bouquets of flowers that they give to the American girls. And I guess they were fighting over the flowers before we got there, because when we arrived, there had been a couple kids that were beat up and bloodied. And they all told us, which teenager did it. She had kind of an anger problem. She had been kind of handsy all week. And we told her she had to leave the camp. And the minute we said it, she just started wailing and sobbing. I mean, really, really, really crying, and extra loud. The whole entire camp, could hear her. And so she went on the other side of the chain link fence, and she just held on to it and just screamed and cried and screamed and cried. We started to move around the stations, and that's when I noticed my daughter Julia just was staring at this teen crying and crying and crying over the fence. And she had so many questions. Every 10 minutes she would say something like, well, what if this is the only meal she's gonna get today and she doesn't get snack time, and then she goes home and she's hungry? Or, what if this is the day she was gonna learn about God and get saved? Or, what if this craft is gonna be the only toy that she has? And the mommy, look at her crying. Mommy, look, she's hurting herself, or she was biting on the fence. And Julia was just tormented over it. And I didn't really have any answers for her. So I got to the end of the camp. And at the end of the camp, we usually do watermelon slices for all the kids. And it's kind of like a special treat. It's, some kids here like ice cream and stuff, but watermelon is kind of a special treat there. And everyone gets a slice of watermelon. And this whole day, Julia just could not stop thinking about her. And she was really suffering. And she said, Mommy, can I go give her a piece of watermelon? So, of course, I said, well, you know what? This is the last few minutes. This is our time to say goodbye. And so Julia brought her over a slice, and she just laid her hands out, and the girl actually said, thank you. In one moment, like all the sobbing and the wailing like stopped. Like that one little slice of watermelon stopped all of her suffering. And it went from her, tearing at her arms and hanging over the fence to smiling and laughing. And I just thought, wow, it's just one little slice of watermelon. And it was such a big deal to her. And then it was crazy because, even some of the gypsies that had gotten hurt from her had seen what Julia did, and they all started walking these slices over to her one by one. And by the end, this girl had like way more watermelon than anyone else in the camp. And I just remember her eating every single piece, like every piece that was brought to her, she just ate it in that moment. And by the end, they had the seeds and the watermelon juice just like dripping down off her arms. And she just, one slice at a time, and she'd just throw her rinds on the ground, and the next one brought to her and she'd eat it. And in that moment, she was just like the happiest person. And I just thought, wow, she was just suffering so badly. And yet this watermelon, just a watermelon, brought like all this joy and healing to her. We come home and I have this very visual picture of how God can't take his eyes off of us, and how he's walking there kind of step by step and kind of waiting for the moments to swoop in, and that he doesn't even want to just give us one slice, but he wants to lavish his love upon us. When I came home and I had that visual, it was just so much easier for me to kind of see God working in those little tiny ways, those little slices. It wasn't big, huge, let me solve all your issues, all your problems and make everything go away, but it was little things, like just teachers that love my kids, and a really good marriage counselor, or a perfectly timed book that my friend wrote. Jobs whenever I needed them, literally just jobs showing up when I asked for them, and for the exact amounts that I needed them for. And just little things, little slices, and I just kept picturing like God handing me another slice of watermelon, but by the end, the juices were running over. I know going forward for me that this visual helps me look for the blessings in the everyday, kind of random, sort of ordinary miracles that God gives us, and that he's not just kind of floating up there, but that he's following like every one of our steps and just keeps inserting little blessings here and there that turn out to be, if we notice them, like this big deal of blessings.
So in the beginning of 2016, our relationship had a lot of struggles. We had been together for a little over a year. I'm the guy that is hesitant and cautious, and Jess was like full steam ahead. She didn't want to look at all the issues that I saw that we had. I came from a bad marriage. I came from a marriage that failed. And so anything that looked to me like failure, the arguments, the struggles, caused a lot of pain, a lot of remembering what it was like for something to fail.
When I first met Steve, I felt like God was really showing me that he was the man that he wanted me to be with. So at that point, from that point on, I was kind of like full force figuring out what I needed to do to change him, to make him the man that I felt God wanted him to be, and the man that I wanted him to be. It was always hard for him to make decisions. He took a long time to do anything, and that really bothered me. I really tried hard to change him myself. And no matter what I did, no matter how angry I got, no matter how loud I yelled, or how many times I walked out and slammed the door and walked away, I started second guessing whether God really did show me that we were supposed to be together.
So in the beginning of February, I proposed to Jess. And she said yes. And from that, I really wanted Jess to know that I was committed to her and that I was serious about moving forward. And I was really hoping that Jess was going to feel more secure. That was one of her struggles, was that she didn't want to waste time. If this wasn't going to be a marriage, that she wanted to move on. She wanted to be out. She either wanted it all or nothing. And even after that, we still continued to have the same type of struggles. Some of the intensity even increased. It was not just our personalities, it was our broken homes, our lifestyles, the way that we lived our lives was confronted every day with somebody else saying that that's not what I want, that's not how I want to live, or that's not how I want to be, or I don't like this about you, I don't like that about me.
We had met with Nancy and Stan while we were engaged and going through a really difficult time. And I remember her saying to me, "Well, you're not married yet." And that was a really impactful moment for me, because it really made me realize that there was a choice. So leaving that meeting, I actually gave the ring back after that.
I had to decide if I was going to walk the way that I do believe that God wanted me to walk, or just go the easier route, which was living the way that I was. It was like, are you going to step up and move forward, or are you going to hang out where you're more comfortable? So I re-proposed again. After he re-proposed, I mean, things got a little bit better. I mean, we still had our issues, but we started really, I started really seeking God and how he wanted to change me instead of change him. Because I think that was a big part of it. It's like I had a lot of changing to do inside of myself. I really was very impatient. I wanted things done, and I wanted them done and changed at that moment, and there was no reason why it shouldn't be done at that moment. As much as I trusted God, it was hard for me to really trust him, to know that he had Steve, like he had everything under control, that if and when he wanted to change certain things about him, he was going to. It wasn't going to be up to me. So we were married.
That was horrible, baby. No way, we cannot use that.
So we got married on May 29th of 2016. Absolutely, hands down, one of the most exciting things for Jess and I to look forward to in our marriage is that we really want to be able to minister to other couples, broken people, divorced people, people that don't think that there's hope in a lot of diversity and in broken families and in struggles, and this one does this and this one does that. I mean, that's something that Jess and I are compatible in, is that we want to help people.
That is definitely our heart, to show that he can take two broken people from bad childhoods and bad marriages and just basically use them and change them to reflect Jesus in a relationship.
I know how much I'm challenged by that, and to know that is the goal, not for just to be everything that I need, everything that I've wanted, to be the perfect, easy, not to be that, for us to bring and give back and to display the love that Christ has for his people by the love that we have for each other.
So in 2014, I got sick, and we didn't know what was wrong, and it had started with a fever, and I kept getting worse, and we were seeing a bunch of doctors and was having really strange symptoms, and we weren't really getting any answers. I had intended and really desired to trust God, but I kind of emotionally crashed and burned after about 3 months of getting worse. And I didn't understand what I was feeling. I just was completely wrecked with fear. I was focused on my circumstances. I would, look at my kids instead of being thankful for the time I was having with them. I would, feel bad for myself that I wasn't able to do more physically. And there was this shame that I carried that, there must be something wrong with me because I've asked God to heal me and I've trusted him to heal me, and that hasn't happened. As a Christian, just crumbled my entire foundation. I didn't know where to turn. All of a sudden it was just well, if God doesn't love me, then I don't know how to do life. It was quite a process getting from doubting that God even loved me, which was totally contrary to what I'd believed my entire life, and would explain why I didn't feel like myself at all. But I really feel like he took the crumbled foundation and then rebuilt it piece by piece, just showing me one truth after another about in his word. This is what you're to believe about me. This is what my word says is true of you. This is what it says is true of me. And he renewed my mind over those couple years, and it was definitely a process. So in September of 2016, on Ariana's first day of school, I found out that I was pregnant. We were surprised but very excited. And a couple weeks later, I knew that something was wrong, and I spent some time with God, and I told him that I was going to trust him this time regardless of circumstances, that I would praise him no matter how this pregnancy unfolded. And then the next day, I lost my baby. This time, going through a struggle, and based on what I had learned with the sickness, I was careful and I chose God's thoughts, and it was like he showed me these pits that the enemy had for me to fall in, of self-pity and fear, trying to control things that clearly I had no control over. So it was, 2 nights after I'd lost the baby, and I was just having some alone time with God. And, I was journaling, and it surprised me when I wrote, I literally wrote it on the page and then read it. I can't believe I just wrote that I have joy. How do you crying, sad that you lost your baby, and have joy at the same time? But he just stepped in at that moment and told me, like, I never left you, and you were never abandoned, you were never rejected. And you know, it had been my own choices, my own, like, I had chosen fear, I had been scared, I had made my circumstances the most important thing over him, and I knew now, like, there wasn't anything to fear. Like, I don't have to be afraid because he's with me, and as long as I cling to him, that's not going to change. And the circumstances are just circumstances, and they're temporal, and you know, I get to be with God for eternity, and it's a beautiful promise, and it's the promise that turned what should have been, from a worldly point of view, this tragedy in my life into like an incredible source of healing for me emotionally, between God and I. And now it's still sad, but there's this joy that I just can't explain any other way.